Now on to other news, and today the Kremlin's Grey Cardinal is under the spotlight. The secretive Vladislav Surkov, a top aide to Vladimir Putin, has played a key role in running the so-called republics in eastern Ukraine for the past few years. Now today the Reuters news agency have published an exposé on this. Our correspondent Christopher Atwood is here in the studio to talk more about this. Hey Chris.
Hey. So if that name sounds a little bit familiar, Surkov is the shadowy, secretive figure behind a lot of, he calls himself the author of Putinism, the author of Russia's, system of government under Putin. Right now, he acts as an advisor to Putin on Ukraine. But he's held a host of other positions in the Kremlin. So it's best not to strictly see him as an advisor on Ukraine, but as an advisor on a host of issues. And today, Reuters published this explosive piece on his actual role in the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. The author of the piece, Anton Zverov, spoke with 3 former separatist leaders whose descriptions of the Kremlin's role in Donetsk and Luhansk act as confirmation, really, of the West's belief that they've had for years. Russia is more than simply a... Russia has more than just influence over the separatists. According to this piece, Russia has direct contact and direct control. They can issue direct orders. Reuters quotes one of the separatists as saying, quote, "Any call from Moscow was viewed as a call from the office of the Lord God himself and was implemented immediately." That is a...
Oh, my.
That is a shocking revelation, really, especially coming from a former separatist leader. That separatist leader's name was Alexei Alexandrov. The other 2 leaders requested not to be named in the piece. They make a really unexpected admission, saying that there's a belief among the former leaders that Moscow doesn't actually care about the Donbas region. The article says that the men feel, quote, "their uprising has been hijacked by the Kremlin," which puts in place loyalists who say they do not have the region's best interests at heart, or who they say don't have the region's best interests at heart. This view obviously contradicts a widely held belief in the West that Russia has controlled the uprising since the beginning. And it is contradicted by a different view of a different former separatist leader, namely Russian political analyst Alexander Borodai, who served as a leader in Donetsk. He contradicted this view, saying, as the article explains, the Kremlin wants locals in position of power to, quote, try to show the West that the uprising was a grassroots phenomenon. So obviously, you've got contradicting views between the local former leaders and the Russian former leaders. And finally, Reuters does get into the actual role of Surkov, which is, quote, choosing personnel to take senior posts, creating a structure for separatist administration, formulating a media strategy for the separatists, and planning local elections. And by the way, those local elections, which the West, of course, views as a fraud and illegitimate, not only did Surkov organize and presumably help rig the election, he also ran Zakharchenko's campaign, the eventual so-called president of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic. So that's an interesting little bit of a side note. Unfortunately, Reuters and the author, Anton Zverov, were unable to independently verify the information and the accusations presented in the article, but regardless, it's a very fascinating look at how former separatist leaders view the Kremlin's role in Donbass.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. That's some profound research you've done.